huge fan. Okay.
I've seen it. I think I know what you're holding.
You think you know what this is?
I think I know what it is.
I came across this while I was in Mumbai at the Prithvi Theatre. And I'm a huge fan of Shah Rukh Khan. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, wow. And I mean, it's such a delightful book.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I know you've done many interviews and, you've spoken to a lot of different people, but tell me something you haven't told others. What inspired you? How did you get here?
One of my favorite books is by this, you'll know her, Rebecca Solnit, this wonderful book called Men Explain Things to Me, which is like a collection of just fabulous stories and essays. And she has this one line where she talks about the slippery slope of female silence, when women don't speak about their own experiences using their own language, right? And you're constantly made to feel, and this is not just true for women, I think this is true for anyone who's sort of who's marginalized from some prism of power. You feel like you need to use the language of the powerful to explain yourself to others.
Right.
And, the way this tends to play out in the world of sort of social science or gender or feminism, at least in India, and sort of in that elite circle that tends to read nonfiction in English. I mean, let's face it, it is a very small pool, right? I think the way it tends to play out is you use the language of very heavy, stuffy academia, right? Like you have to sort of seem, like I call it the seriousness Olympics in the book. You need to sort of make it seem so obscure that regular people just can't understand what you're saying, because it's a kind of theater, right? You're signaling to a certain type of person. And honestly, I think what that ends up doing is you actually end up not letting women, at least, I felt, speak their own truth. And, so if they love Shah Rukh Khan and that tells them something very powerful about their emotional impoverishment, their economic impoverishment, so be it, right? And I remember right up in the beginning, right from the time I started researching all the way to the end, everyone I knew, well-wishers kept telling me, are you sure? Why don't you write it in the more standard social science-y journalism way, where you just make it about just the stories and use a different language. But I just knew there was something so powerful, and you can see this from the book. If we didn't talk about Mr. Khan, these women would never open up to me the way they did. And I think it is actually it's a tribute to, I think, his power as South Asia is one of South Asia's most beloved icons. And so I think for me, it's been a process of also liberating myself, to be honest, from feeling like I need to play to that sort of that theater of seriousness.
Even if you're not a fan of Shah Rukh Khan and you read this book, the way you've written it, it's just fun. Like, every chapter starts off with a dialogue or song, and it's just so much fun how you've kind of done this. So talk to me a little bit about the technique of, why did you do it that way?
So the book, I think let's start with the fact that the book starts in 2006. I was in my early 20s, Sonia, and I was sent to a slum in Ahmedabad to essentially collect very traditional, survey data on women who were doing home-based work, either making incense sticks at home or making garments at home. And I was sent in there to ask all these questions. And when I started the questions, everybody just looked really bored, because what they told me was that they'd actually answered these kinds of surveys a million times over. And they were bored of like the typical urban elite girl coming from Delhi and asking us with her questionnaire. And I realized in that moment at a very young age that I needed to write this very differently. And so I think that's where the commitment began, because I realized right then that this traditional mode is not working. So what might work? So I started asking all these women about their favorite actor, and lo and behold, everywhere I went, and this should really not surprise us, I just met women who love Shah Rukh Khan, and I love Shah Rukh Khan. And I just thought, I noticed that when these women would talk about him, the energy, the lightness, the joy, the pleasure of conversation. And it just struck me like a lightning rod at that time that, well, why don't I just follow this path, as opposed to just asking people about their poverty? Why don't I ask them about their pleasure? What makes them happy? Why do they come alive when they see Shah Rukh Khan? Like, what is it about him that seems to speak to them so much? And how hard is it for them to watch his icon and follow his films and listen to his songs? And what's incredible, Sonia, is I had no idea back then that this would lead to us actually talking about their impoverishment as well. And you see this in the book. All these women talk about how difficult it is to find time to watch him, to find money to watch him. And it became a much more lighthearted way to enter into a very serious and rigorous conversation about the economy. But do it in a way where actually I was also comfortable as a researcher, and the people I was speaking to were also actually invested, in talking to me.
Okay, so how did it feel when, Shah Rukh Khan actually acknowledged the book and, I would give my right hand as well as any other women. So how did that feel?
I know it sounds strange, but it felt like the book reached its reader. Since I told you that in my mind, I always thought that he was someone I had written this book to. The book was I always say it's a love letter to all the women who are trying to hold on to jobs in India, especially in an economy that's not designed for them to do so. And the book is a love letter for him. And I felt like the love letter has reached him. I did not faint, which really surprised me. I was completely ready. That something would happen. I would embarrass myself, but fortunately, I'm sure I embarrassed myself, but I did not faint. So that was lovely. But it felt like the journey of the book had sort of reached its penultimate sort of place, where the book is now in his library. He'd interacted with it. And so it was very special.
The funny thing is, it's not even just women. Men are just as crazy about him.
Yeah, but it's funny. I won't sort of claim to know much about his male fan base, but I interacted with them because I used to stand outside Mannats, right, on his birthdays, and generally I'd show up to interview people who stand outside his house to just stare at it. I just thought it was fascinating. I wanted to know why were these people standing outside. And most people there, Sonia, are not well-off people. I mean, it's very middle class. There are parts of his sort of success and like the money and the status and the house, like those things tend to always get also a bit more amplified. I've noticed at least among some of the men I've met. But, for example, a lot of the men I talk to who are fans of his love him for very similar reasons that a character called Vidya in the book loves him, which is that he's a story of social mobility. He came from very limited networks. Many of these men feel that, making it in an industry like Bollywood is very hard if you're not like the son of a famous person. Nepotism, all of that. And I think I heard that a lot more. So yeah, I'm sure there are like similar reasons why men and women love him.
I again just want to say thank you so much for just taking the time out, to talk to us. Like I said, I came across this book during my trip in India, and right away when I saw it, first I was like, just the title and everything is just so unique. But you've done a really nice job with it. And, it's such a pleasure for me to speak with you today, because I feel like, first as a woman, I just want to congratulate you on doing something out of the box and doing something that's actually meaningful also.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sonia. And this was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm so glad that the book resonated. It really it means a lot to me. So thank you so much.